Hello there, it's Obi-Wan Kenobi, and page turners they were not, but this is the podcast you're looking for.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brendan Marr. That noise you're hearing is my ventilator. Welcome to One of the Force, presented by Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. Yesterday was the Video Game Awards, and as they like to do, they like to announce new games, drop game trailers as part of their proceedings. And not only did we get one announcement for a Star Wars game, we got two Star Wars games announced. And as far as I'm aware, these were not games that were hinted at or rumored or anything like that. First off is called Star Wars Galactic Racer, which is a new pod racing game. But I guess technically they may or may not be pod racers. But I guess the idea of going in the sequel era to all these new unsanctioned racetracks. And the one that we got to see the most of is Jakku. Racing through the junkyards that Rey frequented in her time on Jakku, the place where Rey basically did all her scavenging, is now an unsanctioned racetrack. We didn't really get any image of the actual gameplay, but I know that fans have been excited for a new racer game for a while. And so that was announced, and that was really exciting. The other one, and I think this is the one that's going to get the most talking, it's called Star Wars Fate of the Old Republic. This is an action role-playing game, single player. The question is whether or not this is canon. Now, apparently, you will have the choice of light or darkness. And that, of course, is going to be its own moral question. As far as which way the story is supposed to go, I don't know. But it's interesting because it takes place at the end of the Old Republic, which puts us roughly 1,000 years before the movies. Now, the reason I mention is it canon or not canon, it's because if it is Legends and a continuation of the Knights of the Old Republic games, Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2 and Star Wars The Old Republic, if it's a Legends game, then it will continue on the non-canon story. But if it is canon, this will be really our first major look into the Old Republic era in Star Wars, in canon. Now, it's been hinted at in canon but in terms of actually exploring that time period. Now, if it takes place, as they say, about 1,000 years before the movies, we're looking at the end of the Sith Empire, and arguably the era of Darth Bane, who was the Sith, who survived that era and created the rule of two. The idea that there can only be one master and one apprentice. Until the time that the Sith were able to take over the galaxy. Which they did under Darth Sidious. So whether or not Darth Bane is going to be part of this story, we don't know. But it would stand to reason that he might be. One of the interesting shots in the trailer was a crashed Fifth Empire cruiser of the same design that we saw in the Knights of the Old Republic games. Now, the reason I mention canon is because if this game is canon, it's a smart move, I think, not to try to retell the Darth Revan story through Knights of the Old Republic, but to cover an area of the time period that fans aren't as attached to. And the reason I say that is because the fans of the Knights of the Old Republic games are very devoted to those games. And if the canon were to try to fiddle with that story, I think it would get a lot of upset fans. Now, if you're dealing with an era that we don't really know as much about, that I think would work better because fans aren't nearly as connected to that time period. And there's more breathing room to tell a story without stepping on the toes of things that fans really care about. Yet again, no gameplay footage, just a cinematic teaser. But yet again, this was not a game that was rumored about. So it kind of came out of nowhere, which is really cool. So yes, Star Wars Fate of the Old Republic and Star Wars Galactic Racers were both announced yesterday, and I am very excited. So I'll try to keep you up to date as more information rolls out. But those are my thoughts. My name is Brennan Marr, that noisy hearing's the ventilator. Thank you for tuning in to One with the Force, my Friday show presented by Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you.